Thank you, Sanjay. And I know what you're all thinking. And no, he did not bring 600 Starbucks gift cards, okay? All right, we're setting up for our panel here. So let me ask you the question: why did the country put a tariff on yo-yos? There was too much back and forth in trade. Okay. Tariffs are like bad Wi-Fi. They slow down everything, but you still have to pay for them. Okay. All right, here we go. Our next panel dives into aligning supply with demand amid today's uncertainties. Let's welcome our panelists, moderated by Alex Albert.
One, two, three. Thanks, sir. Hello. Do you want me to move? No, you're good. Okay. Yeah. Grab an extra. Hello. How is everyone? Thank you. Can you hear us all okay? I'm getting a little ring here. Hopefully that's, here we go.
Thank you, guys.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. My name's Alex Albert, and I'm Vice President of Supply Chain and Procurement for the largest boutique health and wellness fitness franchise organization in the world called Exponential Fitness. We have over 3,000 locations globally. Our portfolio exists of 6 brands, leading brands, including Club Pilates, Pure Barre, Rumble Boxing, Cycle Bar, BFT, Lindora, Stretch Lab, and Yoga 6. That's actually 8. Francesca and I attended the Global Supply Chain Program about 8-9 years ago. There we go. And we're grateful to have met a lot of the great folks, whether it's alumni or industry experts throughout this program. It's just such an incredible network. But I have to say, a little call out, if we could just clap it up for cohort number 5. It was the best cohort so far. Let's give it a clap here. In my role at Exponential, I oversee end-to-end supply chain and procurement, focusing on delivering service to franchisees and customers alike. I'm here because I'm a sales and operations planning enthusiast, and I've watched it transform organizations to deliver on time, deliver revenue, and deliver profitably. But before we jump into this amazing topic, I just want to thank Nick, wherever he is, and Marvi, see her over there, for putting, and also to the Randall Kendrick Global Supply Chain Institute, who put this amazing event together. So let's clap it up for them. And I also want to thank this panel of industry experts, as well as everyone else here who's serving on different panels, who've taken time out of their busy schedule to be with us here today. I think this might be the biggest group I've seen. I've been to quite a few of these, so we're really grateful for all these folks. Let's clap it up for them. So the value of S&OP is tremendous. It's a strategic business planning framework focused on aligning supply and demand and enabling new product introduction. When done well, S&OP is transformative. It enables improved forecast accuracy, enhanced customer service, optimized inventory levels, increased EBITDA, cross-functional collaboration, and top-line revenue growth. S&OP is more than a planning tool. It's a business planning framework, and it's a great way to run your business from internally. And if you haven't deployed it, I would highly recommend it. It provides a decision-making framework for you to be able to respond, not react to the challenges you're facing in real time, while leveraging new technologies to enhance planning. However, tech alone is not the answer. The real power comes in a combination of the people, the process, and the data. We're here today as a panel because we all believe in the power of S&OP. And if we do this right, I'm pretty sure you all will be believers as well. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. I'm going to ask the panel to answer 3 questions first. So what is your name? That's the first one. All right. What is your role? And then last but not least, what is your salary? No, I'm just kidding. No, the last one is what is your story? So we'll go ahead. Why don't we start with Raz there at the end?
Great. 2 quick things though. One is, had I known in high school that y'all had people like Nick in marching bands and all this stuff, I would started my career in sales ops planning than sales. So this is a really cool event. Second is, I have to leave a little bit early. It's not that I didn't love y'all as an audience. It's a flight I have to catch. So if you see me scoot off a little premature. My name is Rich Razgadis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Flow Water. We're focused on fixing America's broken drinking water infrastructure. We have cataclysmic issues that are happening and have happened for decades in our drinking water across the United States. So what we do is we build these pieces of hardware, just to contextualize it as it relates to this panel today, pieces of hardware that get deployed that connect to any water line, and it's like having a little mini bottling plant. It's like a modern day LK water fountain that super purifies and removes all contaminants in drinking water. When we put these into hotels, schools, gyms, and corporations, we actually do all of our manufacturing in Korea, import everything through Long Beach here, and then distribute it throughout the entire United States.
Cool. Thank you, Raz. Want to go to Fred?
Sure. Good morning. Super excited to be here today. I think this is my 10th year at this conference out of the last 13. So I appreciate the partnership that Maersk has had with USC and the Kendrick School over a long period of time. So Fred Gilbert, I actually live here in Long Beach. This is a home game for me, which is kind of nice, not being on the road to go to a great conference like this. I work for Maersk. Many of you know us for our ships, but we also have a very large contract logistics or warehousing business here in North America. So I'm part of that group. I look after what we call product strategy and growth enablement at Maersk, and super excited to be here today and look forward to having a good conversation with all the esteemed panelists. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Francesca?
Sorry, I'm the only one with the mic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Francesca, no. From Best Cohort 5, fired on USC. I see a lot of students here, so this is an event that Alex and I continue to come back every single year. And if you're an incoming student, welcome. This is going to really change your life, and the people that you meet here in a classroom, whether it's professors, your students, and classmates, they're going to be in your life forever. So please take advantage of your network here. I'm a VP of Integrated Business Planning at Jazzwares. It's a Berkshire Hathaway company. Raise your hand if you guys heard of Squishmallows, the plush.
Woo.
All right. What about Pokemon? Star Wars, Hello Kitty. Okay. So we're the top five biggest manufacturer of toy licenses, and Squishmallow is our original brand. So thank you so much for being a customer. I manage the demand and inventory planning, culture, and the structure in our company. And I have a lot to say in today's meeting, especially with the tariff. And I'm really excited to be back here again with my classmate. And thank you for having me here.
All right, good morning. My name's Jeff Woodhouse. I go by Woody. That's probably a lot easier to remember for everybody. But I have the privilege to be the Senior Vice President of Supply Chain and Operations for TRX Training. TRX is most people may know as the black and yellow suspension trainers, commercial gyms. You've probably seen them at Orange Theory or LA Fitness or at home. The big thing that's been going on for the last 20 years, so it's been great. I have the honor of leading a diverse global group of individuals of anything from sourcing, high quality fitness products all the way to the post-purchase consumer customer experience. Been a great endeavor. Prior to that, spent 11 years at Nike sourcing Nike's Fuel Bands. I heard the word advanced manufacturing. We all did a lot today. I was part of advanced manufacturing at Nike, building a footwear ecosystem in Guadalajara for 4 years, and then leading Nike's global 3PL network. Excited to talk amongst everybody today. Thank you.
All right, I'm Tyler Blom. I work as the Director of Production for Young Living Essential Oils. A little bit about myself is, so I started my career in engineering and manufacturing in aerospace, and now do CPG with Young Living, which is the world's largest essential oil producer. So we have, I think, 26 different farms. We're vertically integrated supply chain, so 26 farms. We have several different manufacturing sites and warehouses through here in the US and globally. And we do everything from the farming to the distillation to batching, bottling, and fulfillment. I kind of got involved in supply chain and operations as part of our operational excellence team, and then helping out with some specific projects in our company that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then, and that's a little bit about me.
Cool. So we're going to kick it off here. We're going to kick this one to Raz over here. You know, as a CEO, gaining buy-in for S&OP is critical, right? If you don't have executive level buy-in to the process, it just doesn't work. You might as well not try. You know, often, you know, buy-in hinges on one critical factor, which is, you know, really speaking the language of business, right? And speaking in ways that help the executive team understand how dynamics in the supply chain impact the balance sheet, you know, the P&L and that sort of thing. So, you know, why is this so important, you know, as a CEO when building cross-functional alignment or, you know, obtaining buy-in on the executive level?
Well, it's changed over the years, in part because we're no longer a startup, even though I think of ourselves as a startup and still in many ways run it as one. The vast majority of hardware companies that originate don't make it, and the vast majority of those that don't make it because of cash flow issues or a product defect, and they just can't get the product to market. And so it's life or death, really early stage, if people don't understand fully the cash flow implication, not just the P&L impact, not just the balance sheet. Cash flow is really number one on those because it's so precarious and it's so easy to get upside down, particularly when it's not SaaS. We've got something that's hardware. I mean, you can still get upside down in SaaS as well, but with hardware. So I think really understanding the significance of it, even in terms of, hey, if we get this wrong, we're not going to make it. Like that level of granularity and acuteness to it. The only other thing that I would add to that is I really want people to understand why we're doing things, not what we're doing. I mean, if you understand why, you know what. And so understanding why we do things helps with kind of this critical thinking of, well, hey, if this happens and then this happens and then this happens, if why we're doing this is to get to the point, letter D, then I might do something different between A, B, and C. So those are a few things that I think of, and I think of it as a matter of life or death. And it is a matter of life or death, even as you get bigger, you just don't notice it right away. You know, it's a little bit like you're dying slowly.
Yeah.
It's just not immediately fatal, but it is dying slowly for sure.
For sure. Yeah, I often think about it, you know, as like a lake, right? Have you ever driven by a lake that doesn't have a lot of water in it, right? And you see all the rocks sticking up out of the water, right? Versus if that lake is full, right? You don't know what's underneath it, right? There could be rocks over here, over there. You know, the water is the demand, right? And as things fluctuate, you start to, you know, starts to reveal what's underneath the water a little bit. So, you know, preserving cash directly related to how you acquire a product is obviously so important to the organization. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to add, so I'm the one service provider perspective up here, so appreciate everybody being up here. But you know, I think from a provider perspective, it's really important that exactly what you said, Raz, like, but you share that information with the other constituents and stakeholders in the supply chain, right? That helps make us more successful, makes you more successful. And we operate warehouses for companies all across North America, and you know, having good data, good information, good visibility to inventory forecasts, demand forecasts really helps us be successful. We had a customer a few years back, footwear customer, that we really had challenges with their demand forecast, and we kept going to them, and and explaining this to them, and finally got them to really focus on it from an S&OP perspective. And they were able to refine their forecasts, give us better information so that we could staff to the appropriate levels. And we were able to take 15, 20 cents per unit out of each unit coming through our warehouse. So significant cost savings for you as a customer, and it certainly made our operation more efficient, more sustainable, et cetera.
Definitely. I think about when you speak to that, I think about like the bullwhip effect, right? Depending upon the demand signals, and how you're managing your consensus-based demand planning process. Things could swing really wide, go high, go low. And I think it's super important to understand, how to leverage a process like S&OP that connects the financial planning process to an operations execution plan, right? It helps you manage through that. So any other thoughts on, kind of before we transition on why speaking the language of business is so important? We're thinking about financial statements. At Exponential, we're a publicly traded company. If we have too much inventory, obviously it's not a good thing. If we have too little inventory, it's a bad thing. And if you have just enough inventory, everybody's happy for the most part. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of that.
Yeah, I'd like to, one of the things that I think is unique and interesting for this panel is that Exponential is one of our biggest customers at TRX, and then I got Maersk as one of our biggest suppliers for TRX.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome. Maersk operates all of our inbound into the U.S. and then our 3PL and then our trading customers. But Exponential is one of our biggest customers, and as you look across that, I have our sales team working directly closely with Alex, and then I take that information, have to digest that, and then I have to relay that onto our friends at Maersk and the 3PL on how to operate that, how to plan the resources for that, the demand, the infrastructure, all of that nature, because our business goes up and down. And so making sure that it's tied from the very beginning all the way to the very end is super crucial. Super crucial.
So you're saying if we do a bad job,
yeah, it starts with him. It starts with this guy. Yeah. If I get bad input, it goes all the way down to that guy. I'm just in the middle.
That's good. Awesome. So we're going to kind of pivot here. We're going to think about implementing S&OP and what are some of those challenges. So I'm going to turn the table here to Tyler here. So from your perspective in your company, and obviously you've been part of an implementation as a key stakeholder. Obviously on the manufacturing side and managing the complexity that you're facing there, what does it really take to implement an effective S&OP process?
Sure. Let me just give you the right answer for that. I can kind of walk you through how our process went and our transformation went, and then we can kind of riff off of that a little bit and see if anybody else has anything to add. But for us, it started with, and we kind of hit on a couple of the key things, is executive buy-in. And our process really kicked off with some negative publicity, I would say, for our supply chain side, which was not publicity, but within the company, within our own team, which was we had been pushing our sales and marketing people for more time to get promos and other things done, right? We didn't feel like we had enough planning time. We said we need 6 months. They started entering in their promos 6 months ahead of time. And then a month before the promos, we weren't ready, and kind of caught us with our pants down. And so that really was the catalyst for us to really kick off this process and say, hey, we really need to do something here and fix this. And so we did a couple things. One is we created single source of truth, which was critical for us. It was amazing. We had the data. We had people pulling reports. We didn't have all the right reports, and if we were pulling the same reports, they didn't always match with all the team. So getting everything aligned on a single source of truth, the data was critical for us. And then we went through a full implementation. We didn't have much of an SOP, so it was new to us, and we were doing the regular meetings. That really showed a lot of improvement. And then I think where we really saw big breakthroughs is when we finally had a culture where people started speaking up to a degree in those meetings and being like, hey, this is still broken. Can we go fix this? Can we do this? And solving the problems together cross-functionally. That is where we really saw a lot of improvement. And I think that, I mean, for us, it was very successful. We saw our on-time delivery go up to above 98%. At the same time, we decreased our shipping and logistics costs by millions of dollars because we weren't expediting things anymore. And we also saw our inventory levels, which were a little bit bloated, go down. So it's been a huge unlock for us. But that's kind of what we did, and those were some of the key steps that we took.
Yeah, like on the, the single source of truth is super important, right? So I've seen that at Nike, I've seen it at TRX, and you got a lot of data coming at from different angles, and you have a lot of departments that are focused on what that data is. So one person may be relying on this data, this person's relying on that data, and they don't align. So it's really important for the S&OP process to really align on that single source of truth, and then really go fact versus fiction, right? Fact versus feeling. We have a lot of feelings, and if we're making decisions based on these feelings, it's probably not the right thing. But if you're making the decisions based on facts, and that's that single source of truth, you're going to be in a much higher position to be successful. So.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of the things that I say all the time in our team meetings is one source of truth, or what is the source of truth? And I think it's harder than it seems, especially if you're a middle to large size company that represents a lot of SKUs, that has a lot of different item groupings and brands. For example, for our company, we are the outcome of 4 to 5 different company merge and acquisitions. So if you think about it, one source of truth is not that simple because we integrated 5 different ERP systems, 5 different people cultures, and the processes, right? So what is the one source of truth? In order to get there, there's a long journey of really understanding the process and what is it that we're trying to build. So for our company, we had to really start from scratch, right? Which I think I'm going to talk about a little bit more in the later question. But I think it's really important for all of us to ask, first, do you guys have an S&OP process? It doesn't have to be formal, but like in a company, I think not because we are the S&OP experts and the geeks, but I think it is the most underrated and most important function of the company to be able to succeed in the supply chain operations. And second, demand planning is not the same thing, I'm going to say this very carefully, as sales forecasting, right? No offense, right? But I think a lot of times, depending on the maturity level, right, the S&OP process to be really mature, you have to have a really robust demand planning, inventory planning, a supply planning, talking to each other. Again, sales is the initial point, right? And they're the ones who are going to be able to really tell us the demand signals from the customer's perspective. But we always say S&OP is balance of art and science. Right? It's not just about data. It's not just about people. Sales is very important, but it's the qualitative and quantitative input that we really have to take it into account.
Yeah. Sure.
I was just going to add to that. That's such a good point about sales planning versus demand, supply management. Most of what I know about S&OP, I've learned through trial and error. A lot of heavy emphasis on the error and figuring stuff out. And I think one of the issues that I noticed when I sit on boards of companies and just even early stage my own company is, if we were to rely on demand planning based on sales forecast numbers, I'd probably be sitting on 10 years of inventory right now. And so I think the integration, so, you get people that come into earlier stage companies and they're used to big teams and silos and department and the finance people just take the sales numbers and then they input it. I think this idea of single source of truth, the question behind that for me always is that really true? And particularly as it relates to sales forecasting. And so, bringing in simply my head of operations, my head of finance into my national account forecasting meetings. I don't know how typical that is, but conventionally they're a bit more siloed and you take the numbers and you're like playing against these numbers. But I want my CEO, part of it is nothing happens till something gets sold. So I just like everyone back at the house to hear how things get sold because nothing happens unless something gets sold. But the second part of it is I want them to understand the validity of this number, this forecast, this big national account, this big regional, these schools. Are they really going to come through? Because the numbers don't really reflect the confidence interval as to whether they're going to come through. So just adding a few people to the table cross-functionally has just helped solve a simple communication gap or an assumption gap.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, so we're going to pivot here. I'm going to go to Jeff here. You know, from your perspective, how are macroeconomic factors like trade policy shaping S&OP strategy today? We know we're all faced, you know, with challenges of the trade war and that sort of thing. What I want to focus on, you know, with this question is, you know, how does it impact the process, right? And what are those things we're doing to you know, abate that risk and some of those complexities that's causing?
It's a really difficult question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're all dealing with, right? So to play on the smart city, smart people, smart planet, like it's, you know, sales, operation, and planning, or I like to call it like smartly operating amongst pandemonium, because I'm living and breathing it right now within the TRX brand. But you know, if you try to boil it down, like there's really three things that I really try to focus on, or we should all really focus on. And everything that I end up saying is it's easier said than done, because I can say it up here. We all probably live in it in one way or another, but it really kind of boils down to like these three pieces of the puzzle. One is like diversification, one is speed, and one is just knowing what you don't know. And it starts with like that diversification, right? You're not going to walk up into a roulette table, put all your chips on one number and hope it all works out, right? That rarely ever happens. You might get lucky, but it really doesn't happen very often. And so, you know, looking at your manufacturing footprint, looking at your suppliers, whether it's multiple suppliers in one region or, you know, multiple regions, the same supplier and different, it's diversifying, right? That's your insurance policies, which you're really looking for. Again, easier said than done, but if you always start at 0 to 100 is going to take a long time. But if you're at 10%, 20%, 25%, it's a lot easier to get to that particular point, because the planning that goes behind all that diversification is you got planning, you got resources, you got expenses, you got product specifications, you got scenario analysis using the AI. Like there's just a lot going in. It involves everybody within a company. It's just not in the supply chain world. Two would be like speed, right? You know, rising costs, lead times, that's all impacting us all together. I kind of relate it to, you know, Starbucks was up here earlier. You know, I'm going in and get my Monday morning coffee. The barista, she's taking forever. By the time I get my coffee, I've lost my mind, the will to live. It's similar to supply chain, right? It completely impacts, you know, your missed opportunities because you're not going fast, dissatisfied customers, and all that just leads to the bottom line, right? So that part is really crucial. And the one that's I think the hardest, really, it seems like it's the easiest, but I believe it's the hardest, is knowing what you don't know, right? In case in point, when around that is, I was at Nike. Before I went to Nike, I was in aviation and electronics, so I knew nothing about footwear, right? And I was tasked with advanced manufacturing to go build an ecosystem in Mexico. Right? So where do you start? Like I'm the one that likes to challenge the status quo. So I go talk to all these shoe dogs within Nike. These are the people that have been there for decades. They know the ins and the outs, and you start asking these questions. Well, first of all, you can't boil the ocean, so you got to narrow the scope, start asking questions, you know, what's working, because history usually repeats itself, right? So if you start with that presence, then you can start triaging when you're asking these questions. And what I ended up learning is there's pieces of the puzzle that the world has evolved, right? We've gone from the 20th century to the 21st century, and things have changed. And so I started picking out pieces of those, and it worked out, right? So we were able to build a footwear factory in Guadalajara. There's a podcast on it if you ever want to look at it, is how Nike established a footwear factory in Mexico from 2014 to 2018. And probably thinking a couple years ago, it should have stayed because it really would have worked out during the pandemic. But when you look at all those three things, and you take those all into consideration, it really helps you keep focus and point in the right direction.
Great. Good, Jesse.
Hello. Okay.
There you go.
So I know he touched a really great point about diversification and speed. And I think if you guys are in the manufacturing, especially, the reality of like diversification going hand in hand with speed is extremely difficult, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys have products made in China, right? And we're trying to diversify. Maybe 100% of your products were made in China, maybe somewhere. But for our case, toy industries heavily rely on manufacturing in China. And I'm sure we're not the only company who's trying to diversify the manufacturing portfolio outside of China. And we have spent all of our investment and energy in our company as a top priority to diversify from China to Vietnam, Cambodia, in Indonesia, and in other countries. And if you think about it in a bubble, right, in terms of just like in our own company, we have tried our best, right, to make sure that not all eggs are in one basket. So we have 30%, 40% in Vietnam, maybe 20% in Indonesia, and 10% in Cambodia. But just to, to the point that Jeff made, you don't know what you don't know, right? We're not the only ones who are trying to diversify our manufacturing portfolios. All the other companies are. So we were dealt recently with the custom clearance issues, raw material transportation issue from China to Vietnam, right? And again, we're not the only one who's trying to move raw materials from China to Vietnam or other countries, right? So there's a whole trickle-down effect, downstream impact of how really it affects the complexity of the supply chain, right? And again, you don't know what you don't know. So you have to pivot, you have to have agility, you have to have that flexible mindset to be able to just troubleshoot together. So today, I'm sure a lot of you guys probably could agree to what we're going through. Every day is a fire drill, right? Every day is like, what is the exception that we have to manage? What is the delay that we have to manage? And if you think about some of the industries that are very specific to the season, right, in terms of the demand curve, toy manufacturing is very seasonal. Would you guys want toys on the day after Christmas? Right? So we have to have the product on time, right? And in order for us to have the product on time, there's a financial impact, right? So we're getting a lot of air freight to make sure that we're having those on time. So and there's a price velocity conversation that we have, right? There's a price that's going to affect the manufacturer retail. There's going to be manufacturing cost. There's going to be factory cost. So I think tariff is a really, really complex problem that we're all dealing with it in different ways. But I think, like Jeff said, the speed, agility, right, and really being able to deal with what you don't know at the moment, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a, as you think about the S&OP process, and if it's an integrated process into your operations, it allows you to have a platform to review things, right, frequently, and understand the changing dynamics within the organization, within the marketplace, and that sort of thing. One of the things I found at Exponential is, earlier this year, when obviously there's a lot of news reporting about the changes to trade policy and what was coming down the pipe, and I started flagging that signal, right? Like, hey, everyone, we need to pay attention to this. And at first, I don't think necessarily the executive team really caught on. Well, hey, we buy from a lot of distributors, or we do this. And, it really was like an aha moment where folks started to really realize that, our supply chains are so interconnected, right? It didn't matter that we're buying from TRX. Well, they're making product in Vietnam or making it in China or Bangladesh, and Maersk has to help them pick that up. And so as we started to kind of educate and bring broader awareness through the S&OP process, it enabled us to obtain buy-in and speak the language of business as it relates to what the potential impacts would be across the organization. And during our Q2 earnings call, no one ever talks about supply chain, right? It's like, it's like the elevator. No one actually understands, or no one actually pays attention to the elevator. You walk up, you press the button, the door opens, you walk in. But when, say one day you walk up to the elevator and you press the button, the door opens and it's 6 inches or 7 inches down, you're probably not going to get on that elevator, right? You're going to notice oh, there's probably something wrong. So it was really great. In the earnings call, our CEO with the investor committee had talked about, the great work that the supply chain was doing, to mitigate some of these risks. And so I just wanted to call that out as you have a process that's being executed, right? And you're thinking about S&OP, you're thinking about the trade war, you're thinking about the supply chain disruption, you're thinking about all these challenges that you have. S&OP plays a critical role as a platform, right? To be able to make good decisions about how to respond to what's going on in the marketplace. So, any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, and I'm never going to walk into an elevator without looking to make sure it's level. Exactly. Yeah, a few thoughts. I mean, I think S&OP we often think is very tactical, but I think to your point, it can be and should be strategic as well, right? There's an opportunity to have some strategic decisions as part of it. I think we've seen a few different things from our customers. There's those that have built agility and flexibility into the supply chain and can react to the diversification, the speed, the unknowns, right? And there's those that haven't. I will say, I think coming out of COVID, for the most part, most companies, given a disruption like that, have put that fairly high on their discussion point. Maybe it's not always in the earnings call, but I think that's an important point to make. And as a service provider, we're able to help our customers be more flexible, pivot in different ways. Had a customer who had planned to open a facility in Canada. It was on their 5-year plan. Given everything that happened with tariffs, they pulled it forward basically 5 years and are now executing that. So just an example of S&OP and how it feeds the process, both at a tactical and a strategic level.
That's great. All right, we're going to pivot here. Hello. It's our last question here. It's going to go to Francesca. So, one of the things, we think about, is we're kind of adapting processes on the fly a lot in supply chain and operations, but if you were to rebuild an S&OP process from the ground up today, what core principles would guide your approach? And, where do you see the line between getting the fundamentals right, like the people, the process, and the data? And I know the gentleman prior to us talked about the people, the process, and technology. There's a lot of common theme here. Where do you see the line between, balancing technology and the fundamentals?
Yeah, I was very glad. I was very glad that the previous speakers kind of talked about and prefaced this platform, right, for people, process, data, system. I would say enable with the technology. I think it's one piece we cannot ignore in the 21st century. And I'm really glad to answer this question because it almost kind of takes us back to the basics, right? We're dealing with kind of a chaotic time this year. The joke of our company is is 2026 here yet? We're not trying to thrive, we're trying to survive. That's kind of the mentality that we have. But it really, again, takes us back to the basics and the fundamentals. So if you think about the people, process, data, system, right, enable with the technology, I think you have to make sure that you have the humility. I think that is one of the most important kind of mindset of an S&OP leaders, especially because I think I was really touched by the Sanjay's speech earlier about being the dumbest person in the room. Instead of being the smartest person, you really have to understand and be humble enough to listen to what the problems are of the company, right? So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution because every company organization is different, but what is the one that's keeping you up at night, right? And not from just the leader's perspective, but from every level, right? From top to bottom, bottom to up. And I think if you care enough to really listen and be humble enough to actually understand the problem statements that you're trying to solve from the people perspective, I think the process is the next one, the next solution that you can kind of either standardize, and I'm not saying standardize in a way of a rigidity, right? Because we need agility and flexible mindsets more than ever. But if you don't have the baseline, right? If you don't have the foundational S&OP process where the consensus meetings do happen between the sales, between the planning, between the operations and production, the chaotic situation is going to be even more out of control, right? So you want to deal with the exceptions when the chaotic situations happen, while the 80% or 70% of the business is kind of a standardized or at least in a good place, right? And I think the lastly and the most importantly, I think we talked about the source of truth as data. So let me give you a journey of kind of what we went through, right, in the S&OP process. So in our company about 2 years ago, we decided to bring in AI and machine learning statistical forecast for our demand planning. So we partner with these companies, we demo all kinds of different demand planning software with AI capabilities. And I would say last year was a wake-up call for all of us to really embrace the humility and kind of self-reflection because our data was not robust. Our data quality was not there. So if you are trying to implement AI and if you're the leaders here who are trying to figure out where does AI fit, I would take a step back and really evaluate where your data quality integrity is. Because if you're putting garbage in, no matter how sophisticated the system is, you're going to spit out garbage out. So, when I talk about data, I'm talking about like essentials of like master data, right? If you want to be able to do a forecasting at different levels, you need to make sure that you have that hierarchy in your data already established in your ERP system. So again, right, going back to the basics and just really embracing the humility factor I think that's where I would probably start from scratch.
Great. Anybody else on that one?
I would just, those are great comments. And I was going to mention a few of those, but just from a personal perspective, my order of operations on this would be great people, clear process, clean data, and then all the accelerants. And I can think of numerous times too where we've tried or I've pushed on projects to integrate with not the right people in place. And it just doesn't matter how good the idea is or how good the technology is, even if the data stack is clean, it all does come back to the people part of it. Like that's the non-AI part of this, right? Which is if we don't have the right people and the right leadership facets doing that. And so, I keep learning that lesson and it just keeps proving out over and over again. So I think those are all the humility on this. And then also, being able to acknowledge when we're wrong and course correct. And I think this is the other issue as companies get bigger. When you're early, everyone's really comfortable admitting their failures and their mess ups and like this, we blew this. It gets harder as you bring in people from larger companies or you get bigger. People start protecting themselves in ways. I think breaking that down is a really important part of S&OP because it's bullshit in, bullshit out. And that's part of the problem is that you start to worry more about the personal political capital of certain individuals rather than the organizational needs. And as every company gets bigger, you have to fight through that and let people know, hey, it is okay. I expect you to be wrong and say, hey, we were wrong on this. Let's do something else. And I think that goes back to the humility piece. Yeah, it's hard to get there.
Yeah, it's like I always say, you're going to fail. But when you do fail fast. Yes. And let's have full transparency, yes. Right? And that's how you course correct. So, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would say to add to that would be like just continuous improvement. Like when I joined TRX, like there was an S&OP process in place, and now I'm on the third one. I think it's the one that's going to stick, but you got to embrace change. Change is scary, but embrace it, constantly reviewing it, making sure the right people are at the table, the right inputs are coming in, that data integrity, the single source of truth is super important. And just embrace change. I think that's the takeaway there for continuous improvement.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty much it for our Q&A up here. What we wanted to do is leave a little bit of time here at the end to answer any questions. I don't know if there's mics out there. Last year there was, but any audience questions for any of the folks up here on the panel? Don't be scared. It's all good. There's no bad questions. Thank you.
How do you guys
Sales number?
How do you take the uncertainty? What is today?
Okay, wait, can I real quick? Can you say your name and who you're with and then answer your question?
NNR Global Logistics. And my question is, how do you guys plan for the tariff uncertainty and how that's going to change pricing, everything else? How do you take that into account for your sales planning or operational planning?
We just wait a few days.
See what happens.
That was great. Oh man, that was great. Anybody else?
I'll kind of go, with examples of what we're dealing with, and I'm not saying that's the right answer or the perfect, way to go about it, but we have established, before the tariff, the platform and process of having bottoms-up forecast. When I say bottoms-up forecast, I'm talking about the item level, the SKU level, and the customer level, right? The most granular level that you guys can think of, right? And then we established a top-down plan forecast, right? Which is at the company, the projection level, right? And usually our top-down plan, because we are a brochure company, we have to report to Warren Buffett, right? we don't really change our top-down planning because that is the budget that we're trying to achieve and the goal that we're trying to do. But with the tariff, we have to make exceptions, right? So bottoms-up forecast is constantly changing. We usually lock, the season by season in terms of what the forecast should be. But, we're changing pricing, we're changing the quantity, we're changing the order models from import to domestic, domestic back to import, who's going to be an import of the record all the time, right? So in order to make sure that we're right-sizing the bottoms-up forecast, we had to change our budget. We had to change our top-down plan, which is really abnormal for a lot of public companies, right? So we had to change it 3 times this year. But again, I think it came from our senior leadership, right? Like, we have to be realistic, guys. Like, traditional S&OP sometimes goes out the window, and this year is not the year to be traditional, right? So that's kind of how we went about it.
I would add one little piece to that. One of the things we did is through our S&OP process, we evaluated all the different product categories, and we used some business intelligence tools to help us understand maybe some things we didn't understand about our suppliers, where their points of origin were, and that sort of thing. You can see all that. And so, we were able to put a data set together that helped us build like a confidence level in a low, medium, and high kind of framework where we could go into the executive team and say, hey, worst case scenario, here's what it looks like. Best case scenario, here's what it looks like. And here are the assumptions that we put into that. So, we've been using data and using, different BI tools that help inform what we're trying to do there. Your name and who you're with and your question.
I'm the host of something called the Asia Pacific Business Forum Forecast podcast, and I'm formerly with the Marshall School for 47 years.
Nice.
Rich, you said your product is produced in Korea.
Yes.
Okay, and what's the current tariff rate now? That
It's
19 or
No, it's 30.
it's 30?
I believe it's 30. Again, I was mostly joking when I said we wait a few days, but not completely joking because I still expect that this will change.
Is your plan to get your supplier to drive down their price?
There's a couple of things. I mean, obviously you got 2 levels, 3 really. One is to lower price through the manufacturing and alternative sourcing of subcomponents. So that's one thing that we're looking at right now is we're doing a tear down on our BOM and looking at every subcomponent price and seeing how we can standardize some of that. And that BOM reduction plan is something that, when you're early scaling a company, you don't necessarily spend a lot of time on because you're scaling. And then the second piece is probably we've not taken a price increase in about 5 years to the market. So we will make the market adjust for this as well. So we're going to get it on both ends. And then we're also looking at alternative sourcing locations. I mean, you mentioned secondary sourcing, alternative sourcing in Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Mexico. And so we're assessing those things as well.
But those things would take years.
Well, it would take, yes, that's what I think most companies would say. When we started Flowwater, from ideation to P1, first production batch, including all tooling and molding, all design and development, we did it in 6 months. Landed product in the US. So when you're small, when you're aggressive, you can do things that just bigger companies can't do. So I give my team less than 6 months to get a secondary source secured, given that we did it from start to finish. We already know what we're building. We got CADs, we got industrial design. So typically in bigger companies, it does. So, those are the prongs that we have to work with. But one of those is creativity and speed. And I think this is the new world we get to live in today is kind of force of nature make stuff happen that conventionally should not have been able to happen in time.
That's great. Thank you, Raz.
Thanks for the question.
We have time for one more question, and it looks like we got one more question out there, so this is going to work perfectly. Oh, can you say your name, who you're with, and then your question?
I'm Diana Frey, and I'm with USC. I'm a student, and I have a question. Have you seen a benefit of hiring an S&OP manager to lead the process?
Could you say that again?
Have you seen a benefit on hiring an S&OP manager to run the process?
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, do you want to take that one? Since-
You want me to take it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you do. So go right in.
No bias.
I mean, I feel like we're all gonna be biased here, right? I mean, S&OP is DNA of a supply chain, in my opinion. I would go a little bit further than just the traditional S&OP manager, right? Because each company and industry, right, and the sector that you are in requires different types of roles. So in the company that we have established demand planning, right? And we have established inventory planning, and we are in the process of establishing production or supply planning teams that are designated, right? And S&OP is, at the end of the day, having those three parts to come together to a consensus meeting, right, on a monthly basis, right? So I think it's extremely important for you to have that base of demand planning, inventory planning, supply planning functions before you can have a full S&OP cycle. And I think S&OP manager will be really helpful once you have the basics and the fundamentals.
Yeah, I think that's a great question and a great way to end it. Just want to thank everybody for engaging with us here today and everybody on the panel for coming out. Just a heads up, the school is going to be offering a certification program or class specifically around S&OP. So if anybody's interested, please check that out. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of this event. And thanks to the whole team that put it together. Right on.
All right, thank you, Alex and team. If you guys could go to the back of the room, we need to switch out the